majority of the sales of a business will occur because of some kind of a life change or an emergency. So it's either there is a health situation, maybe a divorce, maybe somebody needs, a family member they have to take care of and they have to move away. Whatever it is, that's a trigger to wanting to sell the business. If you don't have things documented, you're going to get less for the business. It will be less sellable, right? And then there is the risk of a buyer. If they buy a business without actually documenting, what if the employees just leave? That's a risk right there. I just recently got hired by a business owner that just bought a business, and they had 2 employees that have been there for years and years and years. But he knew that if they leave, I know it goes back to the risk of the institutional knowledge, but he knew that if they leave, he would not know how to run the business. So it's a little bit different, because if, let's say, you are the owner and you have the business, so you kind of can jump in if one of your key employees leave. Here you can't, because you don't know anything about the business.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Red Bearded Risk Guy podcast with Joshua Keene, also known as the Red Bearded Risk Guy. And I had the pleasure of sitting down with my friend Adi Clevitt, the founder and CEO of Business Success Consulting Group. And we had a great conversation about how she helps businesses document processes and procedures in order to mostly grow their businesses and scale their businesses. But we also got into a ton of other reasons for why businesses need good processes and procedures and why they need to be documented. This is a topic I'm super passionate about, just because I've seen the difference between a business that has good processes and doesn't. And I've seen the difference between an owner of a business that has good processes and doesn't. Usually it's one is pulling out their hair and hating life, and the other is relaxed and able to enjoy life in addition to running their business. And so we get down into the weeds with that on today's episode, and I know that you're going to learn a ton. Please be sure to like and comment on this episode if you do learn anything, and it would really help us out if you share or leave a review in addition to that on whatever platform you're using. But that said, I will go ahead and get into this conversation with Adi Clevitt. Again, she is the CEO and founder of Business Success Consulting Group in Portland, Oregon. Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Joshua Keene, also known as the Red Bearded Risk Guy, and I am so glad that you're here. This podcast is for business owners, CFOs, human resource leaders, or anybody managing, running, or serving businesses who are looking to improve their business acumen. That's my goal here as a commercial insurance agent who works with businesses in the Portland metro area out of LaPorte Insurance Agency, focusing on businesses with 50 to 250 business or employees or so. I am looking to just stay ahead of the curve in terms of trends, challenges, and opportunities in the business world. And so if you run a business or serve business owners, I know that those things are important to you too. And so I hope you'll follow along as I sit down with experts on all topics related to running a successful business. I know it's called the Red Bearded Risk Guy podcast. The red beard will always be here, but we might not always talk about risk. That's not the sole focus. The focus is just growing our business acumen, but it will naturally come up in our conversations just because it overlaps with almost every area of your business. And so that said, again, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for your support. Please give the show a like, follow, or subscribe, depending on what platform you're listening through or watching through. And I look forward to learning together. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Red Bearded Risk Guy podcast with Joshua Keene. I am an account executive at LaPorte Insurance in Portland, Oregon, and today I am having a conversation with Adi Clevitt of Business Success Consulting Group. She is a process and SOP rock star or extraordinaire, or at least that's how I think of her, and I will go ahead and let her take it away with a brief intro. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and give us maybe some background in how you got into doing what you're doing.
Sure. Well, thank you, Joshua. First of all, thank you for having me as a guest on the podcast. You would just say a guest on mine, and I'm excited to flip the script and then you're asking me questions, which is incredible. And yeah, so I am a process consultant. I'm all about processes and procedures, and my team and myself are all about creating, documenting, and implementing processes and procedures for companies.
Awesome. And when you're, so just to give a little bit of background, when you're not, and maybe I'll learn something here too, when you're not helping business owners with the processes and procedures and things like that, and everything that all the benefits that brings, what are you doing with your free time? What are some of your interests, and maybe how'd you get into helping people with processes?
Sure. So those are two things. So how I got into helping people with processes, my background is industrial engineering. That's how I got started on the journey to bring order and organization and create processes and systems. And I basically stayed on the same career path, but I founded my own company in 2011. And that's what I realized that a lot of entrepreneurs they need help with systems and processes and actually creating those, because they don't do it themselves, right? The reason why they need processes, we'll probably go into it, but why do they hire us is because they do not have the time or the expertise to do it themselves. And we basically, it's a done it for you service. So if you have a business right now, think about like the list when you have on your to-do list for I don't know how many years. Yeah, we need to document. We need to have good training manuals. We need to have processes and procedures. So we basically identify and create and handle that need. So that's how, I still stayed on the same career path. It's just different aspects of that career. So that's the answer about how did I even get started on it. And I implemented my own business and I implemented in other businesses. So I'm really all about creating that order and organization. When I am not doing that. So I have a great family. I have a wonderful husband, Ben, and a son, Daniel. So I like spending time with them and with my extended family, with my in-laws, with my parents, etc. And I also I like to hike. We live in the Pacific Northwest, and I like the outdoors. I like exercising. I like anything that has to do with health food and exercising and living well. So, I like to do a lot of research about that and find new methods and new systems and, systems again. But I love that. I love spending time with my friends. I love volunteering in the community. So a lot of activities, and definitely I like it when it's balanced. I have my work, but I also have my the things that I do outside of work.
Yeah, well, on that note, you mentioned being from the Pacific Northwest and liking the outdoors stuff, and liking to pursue health. That's what triggered me to put you on the spot here is a D here is has the added benefit of getting vitamin D year round, because she can just hop over to Florida when the weather's not so good here, and so that's where she is today. But yeah, that is that's a goal, I guess, to be able to go somewhere nice when the weather turns here, because I love it here, but it gets a little cloudy. Well, that's great to learn a little bit more just about you personally. I've been working with you for a few years now and learned a little bit there, so that's awesome. And so let's get right into just kind of discussing why building SOPs and documenting critical business operations is so important to the success of a business.
Right. So, that's a question that we always ask our clients is why. We have to start with the why. Why documentation of processes and procedures is so important. And the answers that we get, and it varies in terms of the order, right, of importance according to where the business is at and what is going on. But it's consistency to make sure that everything is being done the same. And that will lead obviously to efficiency and effectiveness. Institutional knowledge, capturing the institutional knowledge, capturing the tribal knowledge, however you want to call it, but basically the hard-won knowledge that people have, that it's basically in their heads or the heads of the key employees. And either it's for risk mitigation if the key employee leaves and then they live with the knowledge, or if they want to scale and they want to basically train others on the same things that it just very specialized people can do it, so that way they can scale. So it's basically that knowledge transfer and also for training and onboarding. So a correct onboarding, right onboarding, you bring somebody on, like for instance, I'm hiring right now, but I don't have, I know that I'm onboarding somebody, there's going to be no problem because all the SOPs are written, all the standard operating procedures are written with examples, with videos, with screenshots. So I will basically give them a login, have them read it, have them try it. And of course, there will be some hands-on training, but the majority of it, basically, I have the textbook. So I have a manual how my business runs.
Yeah.
So that is very helpful. So those are the key aspects of why it's also like, there is also more like a personal wife, like, business owners can say, I want to 3x my revenue, right? So in order to do that, I have to hire another 5 salespeople. Here is the process, etc.
Yeah.
And of course, when selling the business also, selling the business is a key component of it is actually have things documented, because then it's more tangible and you're getting a better value for your business.
Definitely. Well, all of those are really huge things, I think, on business owners' minds on a day-to-day basis. So what can you think of maybe some real life stories? I'm putting you on the spot here, or examples of, what a horror story, or what a business with no documentation and no processes versus one that does have them, like what's the difference? Or maybe you can even use an example of one that was in that state of chaos when you met them and now they have things in place, and what does that look like now?
Sure. So a horror story is I was actually traveling. I was at the airport and I get a call from a dear friend of mine who referred me many, many clients. And he asked me to talk to one of his clients because the operations person basically gave their 2-week notice, and we're already 1 week into that notice, and nobody knows what that person is doing. So, and it didn't end very well. So the person didn't want to stay. I said, I'm sorry, I'm about to get on an airplane. And although we do the majority of our work virtually and remotely, that was not possible because in a week you can't capture all that knowledge. So that's a horror story.
Mm-hmm.
Almost horror story that turned out fine was another client where their main accounting person had to have an emergency operation. She was out of commission for about 2 months. I mean, she could do some things from home after recovery, but it was a tough time for her. And that was a wake-up call. So they somehow managed to get by and figure it out. But then when she came back to work, then they engaged with us in order to document everything. So now that fear or that risk does not exist. So that's an almost horror story that turned out okay. Another example is a client that just recently told me that they cut their training time of new employees on onboarding and training new employees by 75%. So those are different stories all across the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, the onboarding one is huge. That's a major headache, I think, for business owners they know they need people, but they don't have time to dedicate 40 hours a week holding that person's hand. And from the other side of that, I've been an employee at a company where I didn't even really understand what my job was, or how my job contributed to the goals of the business or any of that. And then I've been at other businesses where you show up and from day one, they've got you onboarded within a couple of weeks, and you can just start thriving and performing in that environment because it's all documented. And it's, in the 2 examples I'm thinking of, they were very similar jobs. It wasn't like one was way more complex than the other. It was just that one had those in place and one didn't. So that's huge. So I don't want to make this I know the title of the episode the show is The Red Bearded Risk Guy, and I don't want to make it all about risk, but this really does tie into risk management for owners. One big one you mentioned is key people.
Right.
That's when an insurance guy like me sits down with the owner and tries to talk about insurance, we're usually looking at your general liability and business auto, and those are all real risks, but that's actually a bigger risk, I think, to have someone that has all the relationships or, all of the business knowledge essentially, and then they're gone, and you essentially don't have a viable business at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Joshua, there's also the point, I'm glad you brought it up, because there is definitely, like, good documentation definitely addresses risk. It's a risk mitigation for the business. You can talk also, let's say, customer service. If you don't have your procedures documented for customer service, and your customers are not getting the same service by each representative, then you can run into the risk of losing customers because they're not getting your signature service, right? Especially, let's say, for instance, you're a dentist, and you treat your patients, you have your bedside manners, you have the way you talk, the way you present your treatment, the way the practice is being known, and that's why you're very successful and get a lot of referrals. You bring in an associate, there are no procedures in place, there are no policies, so there is no agreement really how you actually interact with the patients. And maybe they are great clinicians, but they don't have all those procedures of how to actually present the treatment. How do you talk to the patients, and that's something that the patients are very used to. So then there is a risk of the patients not wanting to come back or not referring. It's not always very open, like, oh, well, they're walking away. No, it can be like they stop talking about how wonderful it is of an experience is to go to see the doctor. So that is risk as well, that you can definitely resolve it by creating those processes and procedures. Another risk is the key knowledge, but also like in the sale of a business. If you want to make your business sellable, because I just interviewed somebody, a business broker, on my podcast, and she said that per her experience, and she's very, very successful, is that the majority of the sales of a business will occur because of some kind of a life change or an emergency. So it's either there is a health situation, maybe a divorce, maybe somebody needs, a family member they have to take care of and they have to move away. Whatever it is, that's a trigger to wanting to sell the business. If you don't have things documented, you're going to get less for the business. It's going to be less sellable, right? And then there is the risk of a buyer. If they buy a business without actually documenting, what if the employees just leave? That's a risk right there. I just recently got hired by a business owner that just bought a business, and they had 2 employees that have been there for years and years and years. But he knew that if they leave, I know it goes back to the risk of the institutional knowledge, but he knew that if they leave, he would not know how to run the business. So it's a little bit different, because if, let's say, you are the owner and you have the business, so you kind of can jump in if one of your key employees leave. Here you can't, because you don't know anything about the business. But also when you're growing your business, and let's say now you started with 2 employees, now you have 20, 30, 40, you don't know what they're doing. You might have a general concept, but you don't know which software they use, what do they run, how do they do it, you don't, and you have to have it documented so it's very clear what each person is doing. And also, in terms of the risk, also, if you don't have that and you can cross-train, you can have a risk like we saw during the pandemic. Somebody can get sick. We don't have to be here like people get hit by a bus, or people don't show up, or people disappear. Just like as simple as somebody gets a very bad, maybe they get a cold or a flu, and they just like in bed and they can't even function. They have brain fog. They can't, they don't remember where they put the papers or whatnot, or what to do with this or what to do with that. You have to have somebody on the ground actually opening the book and go, okay, this is how you do that. No problem. I can service the customer and I can make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and that's, from my perspective, some of our clients will think, about the big bad event that can happen, like a partner dies or something like that. But it's almost guaranteed that at some point in your life, you or one of your staff members is going to have a short-term disability of some kind. Right. Like the death, everyone dies eventually, but that's down the line, hopefully for most of us. So yeah, no, it's like, it might not be a huge thing. It might just be like your accountant that had a surgery, and that's a huge hit to the business. So that's big. And I know I'm kind of circling back here, but again, just trying to look at it from the risk management side, is when you were talking about customer service processes, a huge one is, everybody getting the same treatment is important for customer experience, but it also can create discrimination issues. If one customer is getting a different treatment just because you have one rock star person that kind of thinks that way and gets that, and then another person handles another person completely different, you could find yourself in trouble from a liability perspective there for discrimination. So,
100%. And when I interviewed you to my podcast, we talked about safety. You have to have a process for safety. So it's not enough just to talk about safety. And you are the expert at that. And you laid out a fantastic process on how to actually implement safety procedures in a company. And I know that you can provide the slides and you can provide the infrastructure, but the person has to take it and document it. And I know you can help put together that process, but that's a big one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. One big one is just, you might be training all your employees, but there's no record of the trainings that they've gotten, or you want to be able to demonstrate that you're being proactive on that, both to us, the insurance people, but also to, I work with a lot of contractors. So if they're getting hired, whoever's hiring them wants to know that they're safe too. So, all right, well, that's awesome. And so can we move into kind of maybe the anatomy of a process, and like what goes into building an SOP? Is it the same thing over and over again, or what does that look like when it comes to actually putting the rubber to the road and you sit down with your client and they know they need to get things documented? What does that look like?
Yes. So the first thing that we do is we map the entire process from beginning to end and usually create a flow chart, right? So from point A to point Z and every point in between, how do we get there? How do we get there, and who communicates what to whom, who gives what to whom? If you have like different departments working together, just make sure that we understand the entire flow from beginning to end. Then we compartment it into sections and assign people to each one of the sections so they can start documenting. We work with them to document, or if you want to do it yourself, then you start documenting each and every one of those segments. And the way that we do it, my approach is that you start big, you start wide, and you start general. So you basically start, first of all, with the main steps that you need in order to document, in order to actually accomplish that particular task. Then you take each step and you start breaking it down and you create the explanation. Now, the explanation can be with screenshots, with videos. We are very big on using videos, so you use a video. For instance, if the first step is to enter the client into the system, then just shoot a video here and just show how you actually enter the client into the system and upload that video under that step. It just makes it easier than to start and writing all the examples, all the instructions. So you basically put it together. Then you have your teammates or the leadership team review all the processes and procedures to see if anything was missed, if it makes sense, if it actually written in the voice that reflect the culture and what the organization is all about. So you do that, then you take the processes, and that's very important, is that you basically have the entirety of the staff read those procedures. Of course, the procedures that pertain to them, right? I mean, you're not necessarily going to have your salespeople read the detailed operations, although it will be good for them to see the flow chart so they can understand the organization and what they're selling. Mm-hmm. So you have everybody review it, give their feedback, and then you basically implement it on a regular basis, that there will be a review, whether every 6 months, every year, whatever, but you want to make sure that those are actually being reviewed.
Awesome. All right. Well, can you share some of the biggest obstacles? I mean, you kind of mentioned one, which sounded like a time constraint. The person who contacted you when you were about to hop on a plane, and it was obviously way too late at that point. But what are some of the biggest challenges that businesses face when they actually try to make this happen and make these changes?
So the know-how, like how detailed should they be, or how not detailed should they be, right? Allocating time and making it important. Sometimes especially when you are the main producer, you want to continue to produce. You don't want to sit there and document processes. Mm-hmm. That's also a time constraint, not in time constraint that you are running out of time, but it's just not allocating time and not making it important enough. Also, what we run into is sometimes resistance. You have resistance from key employees that feel that if they are going to share their knowledge, they're not valuable anymore and they can be replaced. I think those are the main obstacles.
Okay. And so that one, I could see the employee buy-in one being a big one, because you're dealing with human beings and feelings and emotions and everything that goes with that. And so do you have any tips from your experience on that you can give to business owners on how to encourage that, or how to really sell that to the staff?
Absolutely. So the first thing that is important is to actually get buy-in. And the way you get buy-in, like you said, Joshua, we're dealing with humans. We're not dealing with robots. We're dealing with people that have different ideas, different beliefs, different opinions, right? Different fears. So what we do is we basically start with a survey. What is it in for you to actually have well-documented processes and procedures? Or what frustrates you most about your position right now? Good. So if you had well-documented processes and procedures, how would that change? Would that make any difference? How would it help you? So we really figure out how does it help that particular individual. And then we take the answers in order to document in such a way that will actually provide a solution for them.
Great. Well, do you have any other, really good examples, shining examples? Again, you don't need to mention names, but you've given a couple, but just a success story from the last year, or it doesn't have to be from the last year, just any big wins where processes made a big impact on a business, whether it was their ability to scale or they had a big merger and acquisition or whatever it was.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have a mutual client. They were a plumbing company where we documented their processes and procedures. And as a result, the owners were able to actually step out of the business, and the business continued to operate also without them. And they accomplished their dream of being able to spend more time with the family and actually move to relocate to a different location. So that's a great story.
Yeah, they did what Adi did and went somewhere sunny. So must be nice. But yeah, no, that actually, I love that story. I share that a lot when I'm dealing, especially with a contractor or a tradesperson, because I deal a lot with those. And I just know that if someone will meet with you and take your advice, it will make a difference in their business. And they're a shining example of that. They went from pulling their hair out and spending a lot of hours on their business every week to living in a completely different state, different city, and running it remotely and continuing to grow. So that has been awesome. And then we had another while back mutual client who grew drastically it was an HVAC company over a 4-year period or so. And he's basically partially retired at 29. And I know that's not all Adi, but still he gives her a lot of credit to the success in his business, that he just listened to her and applied his advice. And so, yeah, I am, if you haven't noticed already, a walking, talking billboard for Adi and her services, just because it's exciting to see what can happen to a business when they get these things done.
Thank you, Joshua. And I'm definitely also, working together with you on mutual clients makes a huge difference, because you really care about the clients. And that is something I want to give a plug in right here for you, because it's not just insurance. It's really, you care about their business. You really learn about what they need, and you only recommend the solutions that they need, but they really will protect their biggest investment, which is their business.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's definitely a big focus for me. So with all of that, do you have any last final thoughts on processes or anything we've talked about here that you think the audience just needs to know before we sign off?
Well, my advice is always, if you're thinking about it, if you think that you need processes and you can see how it will help you, just get started. You don't have to think about, oh, this is a huge, big project that will take me so long. No, get started somewhere, because you are then a day closer to actually finish the project, as opposed to a day that you didn't start it.
Great. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, whether it's just to start a conversation or learn more, where should they go?
All right. So the best, I'm on LinkedIn. It's Adi Klevit, ADI, and last name is KLEVIT.
Okay.
You can also call at 503-662-2911. Email me, adi@bizsuccesscg.com. A lot of ways to get a hold of me.
Okay. And, for people listening on the road or who weren't able to take note of that, this will all be in my show notes when the episode goes live. So, or you can just reach out to me. Don't hesitate to reach out to me and I can introduce you to Adi. I'm, as you know, always happy and enthusiastic to do so. So this has been a really good conversation, Adi. I'm excited to get it posted. I know that the audience is going to find it valuable. And yeah, just really grateful to have you as a partner in helping businesses together. And we'll maybe look forward to revisiting again on another episode down the line as we work together more and learn more about each other.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Joshua.
Of course. Have a good day. Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks for joining us today on the Red Bearded Risk Guy. And as Adi mentioned, as we were wrapping up there, if you haven't started on documenting your processes and procedures, please start right away. It's huge, not just from my perspective as a risk management guy, but just in terms of growing and scaling your business, in terms of being able to relax and go on vacation or have a life outside of your business. And for so many other reasons, there's just so many headaches and pain points in your business when you don't have the right processes and procedures and you don't have them documented. We got into everything from improving the the value of your business before a sale, to making sure if you're buying a business that you're not buying something that's going to tank as soon as key people leave because all the processes are in their head, and a plethora of other valuable insights about why we need to have this done and how to do it. And so if you got value out of this, please give us a review, like, follow, comment. I'd love it if you commented with any feedback, questions, or key takeaways that you got out of the episode so that we can make a conversation out of this. And obviously, if you want to get connected with Adi Clevitt, I do highly recommend her. Feel free to reach out to me directly, or her details about her and her company, which is Business Success Consulting Group, will be in the show notes. And that said, I look forward to you all joining me on the next episode, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your day.